Welcome back, guys, to our second lesson for the GDA, the Greater Dublin Area. Now, today what we're going to be focusing on, unlike our last lesson, is going to be on our physical characteristics. Now, just a reminder, in our last lesson, what we actually covered was our sketch map, our part A, worth 20 marks, okay, which last appeared in 2018. Now, today what we're going to look at is our physical characteristics in the Greater Dublin Area. Now, the question we look at is a sample question, but guys, it's very, very important that we learn this information really well for ourselves, because it comes up when we're asked about primary economic activity, secondary and tertiary. So it's just like you're getting the ball rolling for them questions. Now, we're going to take a look at this sample question here. Now, this sample question, what we have, it says examine the physical characteristics. So highlight or underline in your notebooks on page number 6, physical characteristics. Now, your physical characteristics, first of all, we have 4 physical characteristics that we are going to discuss. That is climate, number 1, relief, drainage, and finally, soils. So our 4 physical characteristics: climate, relief, drainage and soils. I'll highlight the words Irish region. Below that, write down the GDA, the Greater Dublin Area that you have studied. Now, this question here is worth 30 marks. 30 marks to us means 15 significant relevant points and 15 minutes, okay? So 15 minutes to complete this question. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the essay. I might even advise you maybe to pause the video here, have a read down through the essay on page number 6 and number 7, and then come back to the video. Now, once you have that done, what we're going to do is I'm going to discuss the essay that you've just read, and we're going to take it section by section by section on page 7 and 8 and break it up into 3 sections, okay? Now, what we're going to start on, as you'll see on page number 6, is our first physical characteristic, which is climate. Okay, now, before you start with climate, okay, so before you actually go into this and I start talking about it, what I want you to do on page number 7, on the bottom of the page, you'll see a little gap on the bottom of the page. So I want you to use this mind map here, pop climate in the middle, and let's take down our structure of our essay as always. So take a second, pause the video, take down your structure of the essay as it is here. Now, once you have that done, we're going to get straight into it. So our first thing here, so I'm going to keep the notes, I'm going to go in the same order, and obviously if you want to bracket off these sections on the side of the essay, just like I have done here, it's always a good idea, okay, to keep that structure in mind, avoiding repetition at all costs. Our examiner, remember, hates to see repetition because they cannot give us any marks for repeating the same points. Now, to start off the Greater Dublin Area, now you've read down through it, you know a lot about the Greater Dublin Area already, because a lot of you, particularly those in the day school classes, have seen the Greater Dublin Area, live in the Greater Dublin Area. So you have a lot of knowledge about this already. So we're going to start off. The Greater Dublin Area, as we mentioned, incorporates 4 counties: Dublin, Wicklow, Kildare and Meath. Okay, so there are 4 counties we're concerned with. And when we speak about climate in the GDA as well as the rest of Ireland, really what we're saying is the type of climate that we have is, and I want you to pop this in as I do, is a cool, temperate, oceanic climate. So cool, temperate, oceanic. Now, with regards to cool, temperate, oceanic in the GDA is one of the warmer and drier regions in the Republic of Ireland. So it actually has a very good climate when you associate it with agriculture. So it allows for the development really of agriculture here. Now, our second little paragraph under climate, you're going to have temperatures. Now, temperatures we're really going to associate with summer temperatures, winter temperatures. Now, when we speak about summer in the GDA, summers in the GDA we refer to as warm. So we have warm summers. With regards to winter, the word we use is mild. So we have mild winters. Now, when we speak about our temperatures, our average summer temperature is approximately 16 degrees Celsius, so approximately 16 degrees Celsius, which is that little bit warmer than the western region, which average is at 15 degrees Celsius during the summer months. Winters are mild, averaging between 5 and 6 degrees Celsius. So our winters are that little bit milder. Now, what that promotes there is that promotes the growth of crops, because we do have warm summers, mild winters, and again, we're going to constantly mention agriculture, as I said here. Under that, our third paragraph down in your essay, if you want to note the word precipitation on the side, do. Precipitation is our umbrella term for rain, hail, sleet, and snow. Okay, so it's kind of like our fancy word to use for all them. Now, precipitation, as you will know yourself, varies throughout regions depending on whether the area is lowland or upland. Okay, now obviously the GDA is further away from the Atlantic Ocean, so a lot of that moisture-laden air, which travels across the Atlantic with our prevailing southwesterly winds, has already released that moisture when it hit, I suppose, land first. For example, in the western region, just to reference back to it, you receive approximately 1,500 to 2,000 millimeters of rain per year. Okay, now because the wind or the air loses its moisture before reaching the GDA, the average precipitation is much, much lower. So as you'll see in your notes, the average precipitation in lowlands or throughout is approximately 750 millimeters per year or annually. Now, what we do know is that is mainly in the form of frontal rainfall. Okay, so our frontal rainfall. Now, our frontal rainfall, just for a second, if I'm going to pop this down on the side, just to explain it. So if we speak about frontal rainfall, it occurs when two air masses meet. So when you have two air masses, for example, a cold air mass and a warm air mass. Now, what we know when two air masses meet is that the warmer is always going to be the lighter. So when they meet, the warmer, and that's the line where they meet, the warmer is forced to rise. Now, as air rises, it cools and condenses, forming clouds. And again, once that reaches 100% saturation point, rainfall occurs. So, frontal rainfall is our most dominant type. Now, that being said, relief rainfall does occur in your upland areas. So in upland areas, you do get a higher level of precipitation. Okay, so precipitation is higher, and we do get relief rainfall. Now, an example of where you'd see this relief rainfall is in the Wicklow Mountains, which is over 1,000 metres in height at certain points. Now, what relief rainfall is, just for a quick little recap, really this is a junior cert geography lesson when we actually look at this. Relief rainfall occurs when, for example, I suppose this is our typical diagram here, air travels across water. Okay, you get this moisture-laden warm air. It meets an upland area and it's forced to rise up. Now, as it rises up, similar to its frontal, it cools, it condenses, and basically rainfall occurs. So you get your precipitation there. Okay. Now, in relation to, I suppose, where this occurs, as I mentioned, is the Wicklow Mountains. And with regards to the wettest period during the year, the wettest period really there is December, okay? So December is when we receive the most rainfall in the GDA. If I asked you as well, what's the most common type of precipitation, I think every single one of us would agree that rainfall rather than something like snow or sleet is, okay? So you know that point already. Now, as I mentioned there, precipitation really takes the next two paragraphs. Now, our second last paragraph on our climate section is in relation to frost, in particular ground frost. Now, what we know is that ground frost is actually what kills off an awful lot of crops, okay? But thankfully in the GDA, ground frost levels are very, very low. Okay, now why is that? That's due to our proximity with the Irish Sea. So the Irish Sea actually helps us, I suppose, to keep ground frost away. And that means that our crops in the GDA, and again linking up agriculture, crops actually aren't killed off during the colder periods of the year. Our last 2 points here, and these are combined in the last little paragraph on climate, is our sunshine and our growing season. Now, in relation to sunshine, on average, the GDA receives approximately 4 hours of sunshine per day. Now, that's quite a lot. In particular, it's a lot in comparison to the Western region, which only gets between 3 and 3.5 per day. So the GDA has a better, I suppose, it has a better level of sunshine. The last thing here is our growing season. The growing season is quite long, as you'll see here. The growing season is 270 days per year. So on average, 270 days per year. And what that means is that crops will ripen earlier in the spring, which helps, again, your agriculture there. Glance back, think about if you had this on the day of your exam, would you be able to write your paragraph about climate? Yes, you would. So the GDA has a cool-tempered or oceanic climate. Cool-temperate, oceanic or maritime climate. That means that it's drier and warmer than any other region in the Republic of Ireland. With regards to temperatures, summers are warm, averaging around 16 degrees Celsius. Winters are mild, averaging between 5 and 6. The main type of precipitation that occurs in the GDA is rainfall. Now, with regards to precipitation, we get on average in our lower land areas around 750 millimetres per year. However, this will increase as you move upland to areas like the Wicklow Mountains that receives a little bit more relief rainfall, okay? Our wettest month is December. And you can mention, as I have in the essays, mention your Atlantic depressions that brings changeable weather and how they don't have as big of an influence on us as the Western, in comparison to the Western region. Now, ground frost is very, very low due to our proximity or location beside the Irish Sea. This means our crops ripen earlier in spring. Finally, our sunshine, we receive on average 4 hours of sunshine per day, and we have a growing season of 270 days, which means our crops again will ripen earlier in spring, okay? I think I mentioned ripen earlier in spring there. I meant to say actually, so I apologize if I didn't say this correctly, I meant to say they're not killed off during the winter months, okay? So just to correct myself there. Now guys, pause the video, take this down, pop back. We're going to go back and look at our relief and climate. So I'm going to take a second, pop this off the board while you're just having a glance through your next section. Now guys, I'm going to start back on what we have here, our relief, apologies, I'm going to just pop in and drainage beside this. I'm going to keep it quite small. So relief and drainage. Now what you'll notice here, and again pause for a second if you want to take this down, our relief and drainage, relief is related to the top, my top 3 points, drainage is my bottom 2 points here, okay? So I've combined them together for ourselves, and again there's huge crossover, so that's absolutely no problem for us to do. Now, in relation to the relief of the GDA is quite low-lying. It's a low-lying and I suppose low-lying sheltered estuary, and basically it's quite flat. Now, it does undulate, okay? Undulate just means curve. It curves to the north and the west. So when we talk about low-lying, what we say, or what we can mention here, is that first of all, it is at a sheltered, it's a low-lying, sheltered estuary. Okay, so that's my first point there. Now, after that, what I can mention is the fact that it's undulating or falling or curving. So it undulates to the north. Apologies, something in my eye now. So it undulates to the north and also to, we have here, to the west. So the north and the west of the region. Now, moving on from that, we have our upland areas. Now, as you can imagine yourself, there isn't that many upland areas in the GDA. Now, but one which sticks out to us is definitely the Wicklow Mountains, because that's what we put on our sketch map in the previous lesson. So the Wicklow Mountains. Now, what do we know? Think about what you know about the Wicklow Mountains. Now, at certain points, the Wicklow Mountains reach over 1,000 meters in height. Now, that's quite tall, okay? And what the Wicklow Mountains actually do is they act as a barrier. So they act as a barrier to settlement, to certain types of development. Maybe it's development of communication links in the region. So they are a barrier. Now, what you'll find here, and we will be mentioning this later on and noting it down in our next lesson, is in the Wicklow Mountain, really one thing is suited to that area, and that is pastoral sheep farming. Now, as we'll see, sheep actually have very good balance, okay, which means that they can balance themselves on the steep slope or the steep gradient of the region, okay? Now, our last point here with regards to our relief. Our coastline or coastal area is what we refer to as low lying. Now, I'm not going to say much more, but there is some more detail in your notes. But really the main thing is it hasn't been harshly eroded as the western region, because obviously the Atlantic Ocean is beside the western region. We're beside the Irish Sea, which just wouldn't have the same erosive impact on us. Now, that being said, it is quite a smooth coastline, okay, but does have a sheltered estuary as well, so just to remember for yourself. Now, after that, we're going to look at our drainage. Now, drainage really is talking about water, okay, so how water is actually drained from a region. Now, the GDA has very good drainage. Very little areas or very few areas has what we'd refer to as being waterlogged, okay, so that's really not a problem at all. Now, while, and please note that we're not just talking about Dublin, okay, one of the main rock types throughout the region, our 4 counties, is what we refer to as Carboniferous limestone. Okay, so I'm not just talking about Dublin, just an FYI on that. Now, Carboniferous limestone we have all met before. Carboniferous limestone, as I always say, when you're doing your karst region essay, if you do not mention Carboniferous limestone, you just talk about limestone, you're kind of telling your examiner the grade that you should be getting, okay? Carboniferous limestone is our type of limestone associated with karst regions, okay? Now, Carboniferous limestone, if you don't know this, you put this down, has at least 50% calcium carbonate. Now, calcium carbonate, again, think back to your karst landscape, think back to your physical geography there. Carboniferous limestone, at least 50% calcium carbonate, which makes it particularly vulnerable to the chemical weathering process of carbonation. It's this hard grey in colour rock, okay? Now, because of that, this is a permeable rock, okay? Like all types of limestone, which means water can pass through it and that there is what we refer to as good drainage. So good drainage throughout the region. Now, the last point I'm going to make here is just about the rivers. Now, I'm just going to name 3 rivers. We will reference them again when we get to soils next. 3 rivers that we have in the region that helps the drainage is the River Liffey, the River Dodder, and the River Talca. Now, all these 3 rivers help drain the region, okay, and also will have an impact on soils around them, on their floodplains. So remember, rivers obviously add that rich alluvial soils or rich alluvium to the soils on their floodplains. Now guys, take a second if you need to, jot down what we have here, go back over it, make sure you understand the information that I have on the board. Now, our last physical characteristic we're going to go on to is soils. So I'm going to pop over to the previous board, I'm going to rub it off, maybe you're going to take a second to take this down, and then we're going to move on to our soils. Now guys, so we're going to get back here to our different types of soils. So what we have here in our soil section is, here's our 4 soils, or 5 soils I should say, that we're going to focus on. Now when we're looking at this, okay, so when we're looking at this, what I want you to just notice before we do, basically my top 3, I'm going to put a little smiley face beside. Why? Because these are our good soils, okay? So these are the soils we say are brilliant for agriculture, really, really good. Boulder clay, while it's fine, it's not just as good. I kind of could put an actual, just kind of straight across face there. And our blanket bog, no, that's a kind of what you'd regard as a poor soil. Now, to start off what we are talking about here, we'll start off with our brown earth soils. Now, again, a lot of people will have a look at brown earth soils, maybe if you do ag science, maybe if you have done soils in your geoecology, which we've yet to do, okay? Now, when you're talking about your brown earth soils are found, okay, in lowland areas around the GDA. Now, with regards to brown earth soils, which we will meet again, by the way, they have what we refer to as a high humus content, okay? So they have a high humus content. Now, why this is that the region was once covered, and maybe jot this down for yourself, was once covered by deciduous forest. Now, think about deciduous forest. Deciduous forests lose their leaves in winter. Okay, so that's an important thing if you don't know that already. Now, these soils are excellent for agriculture. They're really easily cultivated. Okay, so they're really good soils. So just if you want to jot that down, either really good for agriculture, really easily to be cultivated. Now, our next soils are our alluvial soils, which I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago. Now, where you'd find these soils is again on your floodplains. Think of the word floodplains of your 3 rivers, along with others that we mentioned. So we find these on the floodplains of rivers. Now, floodplains, think about that old age stage of the river, your feature of deposition, okay? So link back to what we've done before. So floodplains, you'd find your rich alluvial soils. Basically, when the river floods, it deposits this silt, all this nutrients to the soils, making it really fertile. Now, our next one is our sandy loam soils. Now, our sandy loam soils, okay, is a mixture of 2 soils. So really, not 2 soils, but 2 things. Now, first of all, our marine deposits. Now, in this case, which is sand, hence the name, and a mixture of our brown earths. Now, these soils, and if you think about sand really here, these soils have excellent drainage because they have a lot of pore space within the soils. So really good drainage because of that pore space. Where we find these in Dublin, and we'll be linking this in our next lesson, is North County Dublin, so North Dublin. So we find this in North Dublin. Now think what's in North Dublin in relation to agriculture, your market gardening, okay? Because market gardening occurs here. Now, last two, which is really the least important, but it's a good little thing to have in here. We find boulder clay, which, as we know, covers the central plains of Ireland. Think about your limestone essay. Boulder clay we find along the coastline. And finally, our last one, blanket bog, i.e. peat, is found in the Wicklow Mountains. Now, guys, that was our last physical characteristic, and really this is vital for yourselves to know. Now, why? Because you can be asked about factors with, as I said, primary, i.e. your agriculture, secondary, your manufacturing, or tertiary, your transportation and your tourism. So how these factors influence any of them 3. Now, really, the figures. As you can see here, we have loads of figures, we have loads of keywords, and that's what you need to sit down and learn. So you might decide, I don't want to learn that essay off by heart. I might add in a couple of points from the essay on this and learn my mind map so I know the figures. But guys, get this learnt before we move on to our agriculture next. Okay, guys? We'll see you in our next lesson where we cover agriculture. Bye now.